It's the day after government tabled the multi-billion-dollar estimates of expenditure for the 2016-2017 fiscal year. Yes, that big yellow book outlining how much money to spend on health, education, and a number of other things. The topic, as expected, is dominating talk time. Later in the show, we'll share some of the details of the budget with you. And
the days of the correctional facilities being third or fourth in line are over.
Following a tour of one correctional center, we'll hear about the plans to back up that declaration. Plus, details on a wide-ranging power-up talk session at the Trenchtown Polytechnic College. Hi everyone, I'm Theodore Henry. Those and more after these messages.
This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Search for its breeding sites and destroy them. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Don't make diseases spread. Wash your hands with soap and water instead. Wash them regular or use a hand sanitizer. Make sure the germs them dead. Touching your eyes or your mouth or your nose. Wash your hands before you do things like those. After you use the bathroom before preparing food, come on, wash your hand them clean.
Good day, I'm Carrie Ann Smith and this is your GIS News for Friday, April 15. Government will be funding most of its $580 billion budget with money from revenues and grants. The estimates of revenue tabled in the House of Representatives yesterday reveals that $445.5 billion of that amount will be earned from taxes. $30.5 billion will be from non-tax revenue and the remainder from capital revenue and grants. The country is also expected to get $89.4 billion in loans to help fund the budget. Finance Minister Audley Shaw will provide more details on government's revenue plans and other fiscal policy decisions when he opens the budget debate on May 12. In the meantime, the 2016-2017 estimates of expenditure is being reviewed by the Auditor General before it's examined by the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament from May 3 to 5. And we'll have more details on the budget later in Jamaica Magazine. In a bid to effect change in the public sector, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says plans are underway to establish a new initiative called the Jamaica House Fellowship. Mr. Holness says the initiative will engage the island's entrepreneurial talents in the public service from an early age so that the public sector will start operating as efficiently as the private sector.
The long-term objective is to make sure that the public sector has the talent pool to support the regulatory environment that can work at the speed of business. It is an investment we're going to make now. We will do it in conjunction with the private sector. But at the end of the day, we will make our public sector the reservoir of managerial talent that will help to drive economic growth and job creation in Jamaica.
The Prime Minister was speaking on Thursday at the opening of Expo Jamaica 2016. He announced plans to restore incentives for financing under the Junior Stock Exchange and pledged to assist with the opening up of new markets for Jamaican producers by aligning the island's foreign policy with its economic policy. Prime Minister Holness also revealed that government would be appointing several investment ambassadors to assist with seeking out new markets overseas.
By next week, Wednesday, we will appoint two. One who will have India and the Middle East as their remit, and another general remit with focus on Europe to create new markets and build new opportunities for Jamaica.
As the so-called Panama Papers continue to command international attention, Jamaicans are being assured that the country has a strong financial regulatory regime that's compliant with international standards and procedures. The recent leak of financial documents from a Panama-based firm has been implicating a number of international firms and public figures in claims of hiding their wealth in offshore firms to avoid paying taxes. But Chairman of the Jamaica International Financial Services Authority, Eric Crawford, points out that the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which monitors and regulates the global financial industry, ranked Jamaica as largely compliant in 2015.
We changed our income tax legislation in 2014 to allow our revenue to investigate the affairs of say, a business or an individual, even where they don't have what is called a tax interest.
Mr. Crawford was speaking recently on JIS TV's Issues and Answers program. Government will be introducing new legislation to improve the monitoring and operations of funeral establishments and mortuaries. Minister of Health Dr. Christopher Tufton says Cabinet will be reviewing the Public Health Funeral Establishment and Mortuary Operations Regulations for approval.
We are now moving to development of legislation for the industry. And the critical areas of focus, of course, are areas related to critical accountability, complying to international best practices as it relates to the preservation of public health.
Dr. Tufton says proper regulatory measures were necessary to avoid serious issues from shortfalls in industry standards. He was addressing the annual Funeral Directors Brunch at the Knutsford Court Hotel earlier this week. The National School Feeding Policy, which has been in its draft stages for some time, is to be implemented this year. The policy will guide the Education Ministry's school feeding program for the next academic year and onwards.
The goal of the policy is to improve educational outcomes of the school-age population through targeted nutritional support.
The Education State Minister was speaking on Wednesday at the media launch of Child Month 2016. Meanwhile, this year's Child Month focus will be on the health and wellness of the nation's children, guided by the theme, Healthy Children Build a Stronger Nation. While speaking at the launch on Wednesday, Education State Minister Floyd Green said his ministry would be taking a holistic approach to the month's observance. He says activities will focus on engaging various agencies and organizations about meeting the needs of our children.
We will direct the conversation for Jamaicans to recognize that the nation's children are our children. Our mission is to change the conversation from being my child or your child to our child. We have to drive home the message that each of us has a role to play in ensuring that each Jamaican child is developed to their maximum potential. They are all our children.
Child Month is celebrated annually in May. And finally, the Agriculture Ministry will be giving priority attention to ensuring that all primary and high schools have an agricultural garden. State Minister J.C. Hutchinson made the announcement this week at the launch of Newport Fersand's liquid fertilizer. He said the goal was to increase students' awareness of agriculture's importance to the economic development of the country.
We are not only going to be looking at those agricultural gardens in the school just for growing, but it is going to be used as a demonstration plot for the extension officers, where they will be able to show the farmers how to grow crops.
Minister Hutchinson says the school gardens will also help to supply produce to the learning institutions' breakfast programs. And that's it for GIS News Today. I'm Carrie-Ann Smith. Thanks for watching.
We want a productive Jamaica. We are not productive Jamaicans. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity is the way to go for all us Jamaicans. Small business, big business, old and young, we are tell every woman and man. We want growth and prosperity for a better nation with a building plan. So we can build our product and sell our product and put more money in our hand. Our economy can rise to a level and build a better nation. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity.
Productivity, pathway to prosperity. A message brought to you by the Jamaica Productivity Center, a department of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Earlier in our newscast, you heard about some of the budgetary allocations for various ministries in the 2016-2017 fiscal year. Here are some more details.
Roughly $580 billion. That's how much government plans to spend in the 2016-2017 fiscal year.
you will see that the budget is in fact very modest. In fact, in nominal terms, it's actually lower than last year. So that gives you a sign that we are not on any excursion to spend recklessly, but rather what we have to do is to spend more smartly and make sure that every dollar is accounted for in a productive way.
The budget is actually 28% lower than the $808 billion that was approved in last year's supplementary estimates. That revised budget reflected the $1.5 million used to fund the Petrocaribe debt buyback. For recurrent expenditure, that is money to deal with housekeeping expenses, government plans to spend $459.4 billion. That includes $181 billion to pay the wages and the salaries of public sector workers. It represents about 10.5% of Jamaica's gross domestic product. That means the goal to align public sector wages and salaries to 9% of GDP is programmed for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. In the meantime, government will implement critical aspects of the public sector transformation initiative to reduce costs. On the capital side of the budget, $120.6 billion will be used to fund various projects, including those for infrastructure development. Government will fund projects totaling roughly $91 billion, while multilateral and bilateral partners will be providing $29.6 billion in complementary funding. Let's take a look at the allocations for various ministries. As usual, the Ministry of Finance got the largest allocation, $290 billion, most of it to pay the country's debt. The second largest allocation went to the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, $93.1 billion. The National Security and Health Ministries also received sizable allocations. Of note also is the $19.55 billion to the new Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, which operates outside the office of the Prime Minister. As for the other ministries, so how will government fund it all? Approximately $485 billion is expected to come from revenues and grants. Here's the breakdown. $445.5 billion of that amount will be earned from taxes and $30.5 billion from non-tax revenue. The remainder will come from capital revenue and grants. The country is also expected to get $89.4 billion in loans to help fund the budget. Following the tabling of the budget on April 14, the Auditor General now has 2 weeks to assess the fiscal policy paper.
The estimates of revenue and expenditure will then be presented to the Standing Finance Committee for review, which of course is a committee of the whole House of Parliament.
They will meet on May 3, 4 and 5, and Finance Minister Audley Shaw will open the budget debate on May 12.
That's the old way of doing things. Introducing Government of Jamaica Electronic Procurement, a speedy, transparent and accessible online method used to bid for government contracts. Contact the Ministry of Finance and Planning for more information.
What we need is some help, because sometimes the system then break down and we don't have repairs or parts, and we don't have any money to sort out about the problem. So most of the computer is not up to standard.
That was one of the impassioned pleas of inmates at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center to the State Minister of National Security. And in this legislative year, the Department of Correctional Services will not be left behind. The process for renewal and transformation has already started.
Incarcerated, but not totally incapacitated. Paying their debt to society while getting the skills to be productive citizens once they are released from behind those prison walls. To support this, Minister of State for National Security Senator Pernell Charles Jr. is on a drive to transform the Department of Correctional Services DCS.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you all.
Taking the time to walk and talk with the stakeholders at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center, understanding their challenges and crafting practical solutions.
Rise to the occasion, look at yourself and say you're strong. No one can stop you, yeah. Rise to the occasion, go ahead, you know you're strong.
The days of the correctional facilities being third or fourth in line are over.
And with that declaration, the State Minister says the welfare of correctional officers is at the top of his to-do list. Part and parcel of that is ensuring a comfortable working environment, one in which stakeholders have the tools required to rehabilitate inmates. Available resources will be put to good use and partnerships with the private sector cemented to fix the poor physical infrastructure of correctional centers.
Where we can't have a brand new facility, we may be able to make an assessment of what needs to be modified, what may need to be abandoned, the places that will have to be restored.
The needs of the mentally challenged are equally important, and to address overcrowding, the reclassification of inmates is still on the books.
If we are able to properly reclassify inmates, then we may find that some of the inmates that are here may be able to be diverted elsewhere, and it will give us more room to manipulate how we would restructure the facilities.
Steps will also be taken to ensure that inmates have enough information about what is happening, so those who are released back into society are able to adjust quickly.
A big part of the knowledge in today's world is right here.
Very important.
Right here. You agree? Right here. And so it's one of the things that we see as very critical, and we'll be looking on it and we'll be evaluating how we can better it for you.
Understaffing is another major concern. A review of the DCS's organizational structure will fully address that issue. In the interim, new recruits will begin training in May.
We are in the process of recruiting 300 officers, and that is to replace persons who have been severed from us.
While those talks continue, Senator Charles wants stakeholders to see the DCS as part of government's growth agenda.
We are talking about ways to make our institutions self-sufficient. We are speaking about mechanisms that can be implemented here to make you have the facilities to do cultivation of colorloo, of eggs, of things that will have multiple impacts of reducing the cost, giving us more revenue to divert to the things that you're speaking about.
During the tour of the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center, Senator Charles also responded to questions and listened to suggestions from correctional officers.
I believe correctional officers are underpaid. We need more salary. So please use your office and see what you can do for us.
I wouldn't be foolish enough to make commitments that I can't live up to. But I will say to you that I will be agitating at every platform that I am given an opportunity to. And the basis of my agitation will be to demonstrate what is being done at the correctional institutions, to demonstrate the importance of the job that you do here, and to show where that extra salary would be justified.
Sports is used as a medium to help in our rehabilitation. We have 3 main sporting disciplines, and those are football, cricket, and domino. From time to time, it's a challenge to procure equipments and gears and refreshment and trophies and so on. We are seeking help in that regard as well.
Our officers, some go to college and all things. If we could set a situation where after work, there's a place we can stop, go on an internet service, and carry out our functions of studying. More than we have officers have to be absent sometime, taking time. They'll be right here. You have the service of them at any time.
We are going to sit down, we're going to have more conversations about how we will let you know that you're valued, and how we intend, through listening to you and your recommendations, to put together that formula.
That formula or plan of action is a work in progress. When finalized, it will solve issues relating to the welfare of correctional officers who are working tirelessly to transform the lives of those behind prison walls while keeping the wider society safe.
Stand up and get in the race.
I can become the master of my destiny.
Step up your stride, make we work like a harder. Do it like Veronica, Bolt and a Sapa.
We can rise above the challenges and shine.
Was with passion in your heart. Make a plan and stop all the idling. You think I saw we reach a the edging? I can, you can. Like our Olympians, every Jamaican can.
A major thrust in education this year will be the implementation of the Alternative Pathways to Secondary Education and Career Advancement Program.
That's right. Education is also a top priority for the government. And in recognizing that, stakeholders at the Trenchtown Polytechnic College in Kingston are helping to educate students, not only about academics, but also career development. Let me not tell you everything. Take a look at what happened at a recent Power Up Talk session.
Coming up in today's School Zone.
If Facebook was a country, it would be the 3rd largest country in the world by users. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a different world. I challenge you. The future is about gaining new and emerging skills. Open your minds and enjoy the ride.
Make sure that career path suits you, suits your personality.
The Trenchtown Polytechnic College hosts its Power Up Talk session. Plus,
we will tell you the winner of the SBC essay competition.
From creating a resume to the ins and outs of the music industry and even non-traditional careers that are making good money, the Trenchtown Polytechnic College Power Up Talk was all about empowering its students for success. There was even room for young people from neighboring institutions to learn the various pathways to success.
The first thing is looking at your cover letter and your resume. In preparing for your cover letter, before you start doing anything, once you see a job that you think it's an area that you want to go into, the first thing that you do is what? What you're gonna do? Right. Secondly, you have to personalize your letter. Do some research, call the company, do a blind call and find out. So when you're addressing your letter, you can say, "Dear Miss Mary Jane, HR Director or HR Administrator," whatever the person's title is.
Hope you wrote down those tips. Now, with people like Bob Marley and the Wailers in its lineage, and claim to rising acts like the Man with the Dream, is it any wonder a Trenchtown power-up talk would touch on what the music industry has to offer?
You can become a recording artist. I mean, most people want to become a DJ or a singer. And that is the first and the most seemingly dynamic one, the whole thing of stage and performance and many other things. You cannot also acquire technical skills and want to become like a record producer. You can also get further to understand the whole thing of intellectual property. Why it is so important is that you can be involved in a song today where you write the lyrics or you build the beat. 40 years down the road, that song can make you more money then than you probably have ever made in your entire life once you had taken the proper course of action to have protect and preserved your rights. I mean, a cool quick example is Rihanna's new song, Work. Everybody know it. Richie Stephens basically created the original rhythm, which is incorporated in her song. And that song, Richie will be smiling all the way to the bank. And this is like 18 years after.
Of course, there are other interesting career options.
To realize, I like martial arts, so everything I do, I try to merge it. So, going to college, I was doing a lot of gigs in choreographing for action sequence. Third World Cup, Dancehall Queen, a lot of theatrical productions. I was the man behind the scene who was choreographing the action sequence, the hand-to-hand combat. I'm stressing, there are so many other careers outside of the traditional careers.
Hello, I'm Rosiska Gibbon for In the Zone News. The SDC recently had an essay and poster competition in St. James. Today we will tell you who won the essay competition.
And the winner of $20,000 from Sears Investment Limited is Savannah Summers.
Congrats, Savannah! Her winning essay was on lottery scamming. Here's a little bit of what she wrote.
It is clear that, along with policing, that programs have to be developed to try to present alternatives to crime in order to steer youth towards legitimate ways to earn a living. The Social Development Commission, being a community development organization, strives to integrate youth in society to enable them to make a livelihood rather than to turn to illegal activities such as lottery scamming.
Sound words, as we call it a wrap on today's show. We end with a career building tip from our friends over at the Trenchtown Polytechnic College.
It's better to make collaborations than be selfish and claim all the glory for yourself. Teamwork make the dream work.
We've come to the end of Jamaica Magazine for this Friday. Thanks for spending time with us. Do remember to look back at the throne speech and further scrutinize the budget so you can get details of government's programs and policies for the legislative year. And as usual, keep it locked to the Jamaica Information Service. Catch a new edition of Jamaica Magazine tomorrow on this station. Join us online at jis.gov.jm or YouTube channel or our social media platforms. I'm Theodore Henry and this has been Jamaica Magazine. Have a great evening.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.